Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am so excited about today's featured guest. And it feels funny calling him an entrepreneur because this is someone who very quickly built a company that was doing things the right way and quickly attracted interest from a potential buyer. But this entrepreneur and fellow visionary and leader really thought through things and said, you know what? I'm going to make the right decision for myself and my team and the people that I care about. So we're all in for a treat through the real life entrepreneurial story of someone who's very intentional in the way that he thinks and very exceptional at the things that he does. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Reece Calhoun. Reece is a board certified behavior analyst, and he has been since 2019. He's been in the behavioral therapy world for 10 years, and he absolutely loves it. He loves applied behavioral analysis and loves behavioral therapy and working with kids with autism and other disabilities, which is why he started his company, Review, Gather, Consult, which provided ongoing training to board certified behavior analysts and for registered behavior technicians in the behavioral therapy role. They were in the process of acquiring clients to provide ABA therapy too. However, that's when they were approached to sell their company, as someone liked their model of providing in-house continuation training. Now, Reece has a really cool story from there, but I think we're all going to learn so much from the way he thinks through things, the way that he structured and built his business from the ground up. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Reece Calhoun. All right, Reece, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What's up, party people? Let's do this.
Heck yeah. Well, Reece, there's so much that we're going to get into your mind today, and I'm really excited about it because it just seems like you work through all of these things and really think about all the different stakeholders. But before we get to your own entrepreneurial journey, take us beyond the bio. Who's Reece? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, so I have two cousins with autism and one late cousin who had mitochondrial disease. He passed about a year ago. And so I knew just from the get-go, I wanted to work with, kids with disabilities. I did summer camps when I was in high school, did some in college, and after I graduated from Purdue, that's where I did my undergrad, I was like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life at this point. So I, was searching through jobs. I kind of wanted to stay in Indiana. A lot of my friends were staying there and wasn't really ready to move home back to California. So it was probably like 2:00 in the morning, and I have a weird thing with odd numbers. So I just can't end if I'm searching on an odd number. Like, it has to be an even number. So oddly enough, on page 40, I was like, okay, I'm going to bed. The first thing that popped up was something for ABA when working with kids with special needs. So I looked up ABA, honestly, on YouTube. I thought it was, really cool and intriguing. So I applied and, got the job, and then worked, my way up. I got my master's from Arizona State and accrued my hours and became a BCBA. And it's been like that ever since. I've been a clinic director. I've been a clinic trainer. I've, just done the regular BCBA work with clients and stuff like that. I've helped open, new companies that at the time only had like 3 kids, and then we grew super fast and everything like that. And that's what, led me to my own company, Review, Gather, Consult. I was looking at it and I was talking to my best friend, Biddy. She and I have been besties since we were 5. And, we were just like talking, and I was like, there's just a lot of training and knowledge that, I have from 10 years in the field that I want to pass on to others. So I got my certification to provide CEU training to BCBAs, and I created, the initial training for all new hires that become registered behavior technicians and things like that. So that's how it started. And yeah, we just grew, honestly. And yeah, that's pretty much a little bit of my background for it.
Yeah, I love that overview, Reece, especially because obviously I'm very biased as the host of this show, but I love entrepreneurial thinking. And I very much believe that entrepreneurs drive so much of that change. And so anytime I hear someone like you were actually a practitioner, you were doing the thing, but that wasn't enough, Reece. You said, I actually want to start a business and I want to, you called it out there right there in your overviews. I want to share with others. I want to really put what I've learned out into the world. There's a difference between having that thought and actually doing it though, and actually executing like you did. Take us back to those days, because you made a very tangible decision that you're going to put in the hours, you're going to expend your own resources in order to start a business. What was your mindset there?
It honestly was, I had just become a clinic trainer for a previous company and fell in love with the training aspect. Like, I wanted to make sure those new hires, knew what they were doing from the get-go. They were set up for success. And that's what really drove to me wanting them to like help out with BCBAs and things like that and really set them up for success. A lot of, new BCBAs with like how things are going in the behavior field kind of go into all of everything being like, what am I supposed to do type of a deal. Because a lot of times you get hired, they're like, here's your caseload of like 10 kids. All right, ready, set, go. And I've experienced that in the past to where I was kind of thrown to the wolves. And I was like, I don't want anyone to feel like they're being thrown to the wolves at all. Like, I want to make sure they're set up for success just from like learned experience, knowing like how it is out there. And so that's what really drove me to open up RGC. That's what we called it, RGC.
Yeah, I love that, Reece. It definitely makes it easier to stick with the acronym. So I do want to talk about RGC, because when it comes to you starting that, obviously you're starting from scratch, which is true of every single business. I always like to remind listeners, every single entrepreneur starts from scratch. There's nothing. And that's why we're builders. And Reece, you got it to the point where it attracted interest from others who said, I actually want to acquire it. I want to buy RGC. You did something right, or many somethings right. What do you identify as those pillars of growth that when you sat down and you said, let's build this into something special? What were those pillars or those key themes that you said, let's excel in these 2 or 3 or 1, however many ways that really you view as your success angle there?
For sure. It's crazy. So when I was making, all the CEUs and like I was putting them on like our Google site, we were really driving revenue until my buddy Alex, he called me, we were catching up and we were talking about the business. I was like, yeah, man, like it's been up for like a while. And at this point, like we just had, CEUs for people to purchase and everything like that. And he was like, well, what's like your website? I can't find it anywhere. So I sent it to him and he's like, bro, you're on a Google site, so no one can really access it. That's just for like business to do. I'm like, crap. So I, brought him on and he ended up being, our clinic director or like our chief clinical officer. And, he just took off, running with it. Like we, got the insurance rates, put out flyers and everything like that. So I kind of just like really oversaw it. But what stood out to, the buyers that wanted to purchase RGC was the fact that like they don't have to outsource to a third party to get those CEUs. It was all in-house. They were able to use my certification to create those CEUs, and it saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like there are companies out there that charge like $500-600 for a user, just for a user to get a CEU. Like it's insane, those rates from outsourcing to third-party companies. So that's what attracted them, was everything's in-house. I make them, it's my certification, it's recognized by the board, and that's what's really, stood out to them.
Yeah, Reece, you called yourself out a little bit there about the Google site, and I love that because your friend called out, and I totally agree. I'm so glad, as a marketer, I'm glad that your friend called that out and said, Reece, what the heck are you doing? But at the same time of calling you out, I think it's also worth using that as a very solid example as to why you were able to build RGC, because you maybe you didn't know what you didn't know, but also you certainly knew what you didn't know, and you did it anyways. And I think that that's such a lesson there. Please take us back to when Reece sat down behind a computer and was like, this is a good idea. I'm going to start a Google website. It just seems to me from the outside looking in that you didn't even think anything of it. You were just like, yeah, I'm going to execute. It doesn't need to be perfect. And I think that that's such an important message for listeners. So please give us some of those insights. I think we should all adopt that mindset.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so I was sitting down and I was talking with, Betty. She was like our operations girl for like contracts and things like that. And I was like, do you know how to make a website? She's like, no, do you? I was like, no, I don't. So I watched a couple of, YouTube things with like Google site, and I had set up like a Google domain with RGC emails and things like that. So I was like, oh, a Google site. Perfect. Like, it's on Google. It's going to be shared with the world. No, it was not. So I had to like share it on social media a bunch, and we just really weren't getting that traction. And that's when my buddy called me, and he was like, dude, you're doing this like so wrong type of a deal. But like, we were laughing about it, and I learned a lot from him. And that's like one of the biggest like takeaways that I have was like, whenever starting a business, like I wanted it to be with people that I know, I trust, I do everything like that. And what's cool is Alex was a supervisee of mine. I was technically his boss. So it was like a full circle moment. So he was like, I'm going to help, took it, and we worked on building a proper website that was accessible to the public. Yeah. I have like the type of personality where I get a thought and I just go for it. Like, I just hit the ground running. Some people will say I'm impulsive, and I'm like, yep, look up impulsive in the dictionary and you'll see this face pretty much. So that's kind of like what it was. I was like, oh, sweet, great. It's a site. Go for it. Totally fine.
It really embraces that concept, so simple, of done is better than perfect. And we wouldn't be here talking about a company that you had grown to the point where other people wanted to buy it if you didn't just take that imperfect action. So I love that. And Reece, obviously, kind of the cliffhanger here is a lot of people are interested because their goal is to get to the point where somebody wants to buy their business. That's an indicator that we're doing a lot of things right, that we've got proof of concept, we've got traction in the marketplace. Talk to us about the mindset there, because I've only been on the receiving end, I guess, twice in my 17-year entrepreneurial career. You got there very quickly in building things the right way, Reece. So what was your mindset there? Because that's your baby. That's how I felt when people approached me for my businesses. So I was like, I'm investing so much into this. So what did that look like on your end when you gained that initial traction?
That's a really, really good question. So we went not public. Everything was put out. Website was made, things like that. Our clinic guy, he got the insurance rates to, so we can start providing services for kids and things like that. And, once our website was up and running, I kid you not, dude, it was like 3 weeks after it had gone up that I got an email in my junk folder from, like a broker who's like, hey, I represent a client. He saw your website. He wants to talk about buying it. And when I first read it, I was like, no. I like just got this right. I was like, and there's really not much to sell. Like, there were no clients. We just had a couple of CEUs and subscriptions and things like that. I was like, there's no way this is gonna like go through. And he was super persistent. Like, I got an email probably once every couple of days for like a check-in about it. And so I was really sitting there thinking, and I was like, okay, I absolutely love and adore the company that I'm working for. things are going really well. I'm not, there's just not going to be a whole lot of time for, me to put in. I was like, there's no way I can even go over there full time, because there's not a lot of money coming in. There's no way I would be able to make a salary or anything like that. So I was just like, let me hear this guy out and kind of see what he has to say. And so we met the following day after I finally responded, after honest to God, 6 emails. So we met, and, going into it, I straight up told him, I was like, there's no clients. There's, we only had a couple people buy CEUs, here are the prices. So I went through all the insurance rates and did it for one kid, just one full-time kid. They get 30 hours of therapy a week, what the rates are going to be, and what we would make a year with CEUs, subscriptions. Again, it was just one CEU, one 6-month subscription, and it was $350,000 that we could have made in a year. And so that's what really attracted him. And he was the person that wants to buy it was we love your insurance rates, our suck type of a situation. So it was a lot of bit of that, and the fact that I was able to provide all of those CEUs and trainings. But I'm not gonna lie, it was one very, very, very hard decision. To be honest, when I was thinking about it, I was like, does this mean I failed if someone wants to take my company and we haven't really started or begun to do anything? And, I was talking to the team and no, that's not it at all. This is a success, if anything. So I definitely flipped my mindset with it very quickly. And, when we met with them, it came back to, okay, we just want you, being me. And I told them no. I was like, my team, if they have to be offered something, as well, and like I said, they're my team. I'm not gonna leave them out to dry. They put in the hard work. We met every week for half hour going through everything. They deserve something, an offer, an email. They deserve something. And so I ultimately told them no.
Yeah. Reece, I'll tell you this, while we're together here on the airs, I so appreciate your transparency in the way that you show up here, because I don't think we transparently have these conversations enough as a society, let alone within the world of entrepreneurship. And that's why we've been so excited. Our pre-production team reached out to you to invite you on the show. Yeah. And that's why we've been so excited for quite some time to have you on the air, because this is the real stuff that we deal with. And you went straight to mindset, because that's the reality of it, is a lot of people focus on the strategy and the tactics, and we could joke about the Google site, and obviously you had Alex who helped you with so much of it, but the real stuff is those moments that we all have in our entrepreneurial journeys of, am I a failure? Reece, listening to you talk about this, and I talk to entrepreneurs for a living, that's a wild success, and I love the fact that that's part of what you've done, but at the same time stuck to your core values of loyalty, of resilience, of making those right choices. So I so respect and admire that, and really appreciate you sharing these things. I want to switch gears a little bit, because I knew that time would fly by with you today, but I also know that one of your loves is obviously the world of behavioral therapy. And I'm super curious, because knowing how deep you were in it and are in it, I would imagine that that somewhat shaped the way that you operate as an entrepreneur, the way that you see the world. So I want to, as someone who doesn't understand or know much about the behavioral therapy world, what are some of those principles that you used with you as a founder?
I love that question. So with, behavioral therapy, I always joke with people. I'm like, I can read you like a book. I know what you're going to do next type of a situation. I know why you're upset and all this, different stuff. So going into it, I kind of was looking at it from a behavior stance, and I also got a second master's in psychology. So I also was looking at it as from a psychology stance as well. And going into it, when I was meeting, with the broker and everything like that, I was we were vibing. I was picking up on some of, his behavior stuff, but behavior is everything that we do. We have a saying, or like the dead man's test. Like if a dead man can do it, it's not a behavior, right? So behaviors are just everywhere. And I'm so fascinated by it because behavior is always changing. And that's what really got me going in the field, honestly, was I wanted to go into a job where it wasn't the same stuff every day. I didn't know how my clients were going to, be that day. I didn't know how my staff was going to be. I didn't know what reports I would have to do. I didn't want to, be in a cubicle being like, okay, I got to run this report again. I got to do this report again, type of a deal. I wanted something where it was different every day and something that is constantly evolving. Behavior is always changing. The field 10 years ago when I started is not the field that we're in now, because everything's evolving, everything's changing. We're getting much more understanding of a lot of typical behaviors, problem behaviors. There's new things that are coming out daily, like new proactive strategies, new reactive strategies. It's always changing. And that's what I love about it, honestly, is that this field is constantly growing, which means I'm constantly growing as a clinician, and I'm able to provide that ongoing growth to my team and my kids.
Ooh, those are some really interesting insights. I feel like I'm tapping into not just Reece, the entrepreneur's mind, but Reece, the academic as well, because clearly you actually love studying this stuff and understanding it and seeing it in the real world. What really stands out to me is you brought up that concept of reactive and proactive. And it's so interesting because on an entrepreneurial level, we all deal with this, is that we know, there's things we're going to run into in the future. Some of those
Right.
things we want to ignore and we just want to kick the can down the road. But some of those things, it makes sense to be reactive. It makes sense to be proactive in some scenarios. And I would imagine that in your industry, it's so fascinating seeing things and understanding when to be proactive and reactive. There's probably some really deep lessons for us there. Take us deeper, Reece. How do you make sense of the proactive versus reactive stuff?
Oh, for sure. So we've got, I can't even tell you how many different proactive strategies that we use in our field, and same thing with reactive. But what's cool is what we have is not going to work for, every client. So for instance, there's one, we call it first then statement. So first work, then play type of a deal. Some clients might respond to it, some clients not. So then it's, my job to kind of go into, those therapy sessions with my staff and test a lot of stuff. And that's what's cool. I get to see what works, see what doesn't work. I get to tailor everything to the specific client and their specific needs. And I write treatment plans daily, and I can tell you they are all different. I think in the past 2 weeks, I've written about 7 of them, and not one of them is the exact same. And that's what's really cool, is because everyone's different, and every child's different, every staff is different, and what might work for one kid might not work for another kid. And that's what's fun. I get to go in and see what's going to work and tailor it for them.
Yeah, I guess this next question it's a bit more philosophical, because I was an economics major in college, economics and finance, and I love behavioral economics because it really talks about our cognitive biases. And at the end of the day, we're all humans. We suffer from recency bias. And in your line of work, I really appreciate, I'm not a parent, but I would imagine that if I was a parent and you were working with my child, I imagine I would be deeply appreciative of the fact that you treat each patient, every child, differently, because that's so powerful, because we are all individuals. However, at the same time, I guess my analyst's mind is like, Reece, you've been doing this for more than a decade now. You probably see patterns. You probably lean on your experience of things that you've seen before, and that's also part of your strength. How do you balance that recognition of patterns versus that acknowledgement? And really, I think it's one of your superpowers to treat each person as truly an individual. How the heck do you balance that?
First to answer that, so I have a tattoo. I got it when I first started. It says, see the able, not the label. So I go into that knowing I want to look at my clients, one, they're kids, they're people, they deserve to be treated the exact same way. And I look at what they can do. I look at their strengths and I feed off of that. So, if I've got a learner who's super receptive to like sensory bins and fidget toys, I'm going to go get you every fidget toy on the book, dude. And you've got all of it, right? And one kid that I worked with, he ended up actually being a ring bearer in our wedding, and he and I are still super close. He worked for doing stuff to Mr. Reece that I wouldn't like. So he threw pie in my face, he painted my nails, and I spray painted my hair for him, and that's what worked. And I go into like the pattern, kind of like you mentioned, is I look at what works. And so if one thing works for, this client, I'm going to take it and I'm going to run with it. So if, fidget toys are the name of the game, I'm going to use them to my advantage to increase, positive behavior with them and decrease negative behaviors with them.
Yeah, it's so cool seeing how these practices that you do for a living impact not just the work that you do. What I really want to call out is this is the way that you see the world, Reece. And so it leads me into this next question, which is, I'm going to totally put you on the spot. You and I didn't talk about this off the air, but what's the future look like for Reece Calhoun? Having started and grown a company of your own to the point where we've obviously talked about it here today, I would imagine it's not the end of the Reece Calhoun entrepreneurial story. So where's your head at when you look towards the future?
I love that. So I plan to go get my doctorate actually in behavior analysis. I've, submitted my applications, done the interviews and everything. So I'm just really waiting for an answer. Because I, was looking at their class or courses that we have to take. I want to know the history behind behavior analysis. And I want to take the history and take what I've experienced and what I've gone through and the knowledge that I have and really evolve it. I would love my life to create my own method, right? Like they would call it the Reece method. Horrible name, but we'll get that later. But I want to be able to do something like that to where people can I can create a concept, I can create a teaching method, I can create something that's applied in everyday practice, which, is going to require research and, do all of that. So that's professional wise, that's kind of where I'm going, get my doctorate, do some research. I really want to create a method of something. And hopefully in a couple months to a year, there's a baby in my life, and being able to then learn behavior analysis, parent. So trying not to really, conflict the two, but I want to be able to, adopt a kid, get them out of the foster care system personally, and be a positive influence in their life. And everyone is how do you do it all? Do you sleep? I'm I survive off monsters and working out. And I get my sleep. But for me, I don't look at it as doing it all. I just look at it as I'm doing what I'm passionate about. I'm doing behavior analysis. I'm taking the next steps in my career and getting my doctorate and being able to do more research and really try to create a positive change with a method or anything like that, and be a dad.
Yes, I love that, Reece. Honestly, hearing the way that you think about it, it's those entrepreneurial building blocks. And I say building very intentionally because whether we look at you growing your family, or whether we look at you growing a business, or whether we look at you growing the amount of impact that you have in the world, you are a builder at your very nature. So it's no surprise to me that you are one of us. You are a fellow entrepreneur, and you forever will be, Reece. And yes, you'll have to have some conversations with AI, because the Reece method, I already know it's going to be one of those things in the future. So if you want a better name, start brainstorming now, Reece. But the last question I'll ask you, I always ask this at the end of every episode, is what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and knowing that you are one of us, as I called out already, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Oh God, there's like a few pieces of advice that I have. I think probably the most important one is, if you are starting a company, or if you're thinking about it, do it. And everybody says that. I see it on like every single Shark Tank episode, where they're like, go ahead and do it. But like, no, I can attest to it, is go for it. You're going to learn a lot about not just like how to do a company, you're going to learn a lot about yourself too. And so like another thing that I have is, if you are going to go into opening up a business and stuff like that, is to do it with people you trust. That's what, RGC, we worked really well. We each, like the three of us, each had our own like thing that we did for the company. And I trusted, the people that were on my team, because I've known them for years. One, I knew since I was 5 years old, and I knew they were going to be able to take it to where it needed to go. And so we were like a well-oiled machine. We all had our stuff, and it worked really well. Like, I would not suggest going into a company with somebody you don't know. I would suggest going into a company with somebody you do know.
Yes, powerful advice. And Reece, I'm going to tack on to that, is that you're an impactful and important and valuable voice in the world of behavioral therapy. Obviously, it's so clear to me how passionate you are about it, and how sincere, and I'm going to use the word intentional, how intentional you are about the effect that you're having on others in the world. And I so appreciate that, not even just on a business level, just the way that you're treating your career, the way that you're treating your legacy. Is, even if we zoom way out, that's really what we're talking about today. And what I think we as entrepreneurs need to have that conversation, even societally. I think it's so important. So I'm so appreciative for the transparency, the generosity, and what you've shared with us here today. I also know that you are part of our community now and forever. So listeners are going to be very excited to see the mark you make on your industry. So drop a link or two on us, Reece. How can listeners follow your journey from here?
For sure. So you can find me on Instagram at like the @ symbol thingy, Reece Calhoun 05, REE C as in cat E and C as in cat ALHOUN 05. Same thing, with LinkedIn, Reece Calhoun. And a fun fact, I don't think I mentioned this. So the letters RGC are like actually my initials. It's my real or full name is Reece Goddard Calhoun, so RGC. And yeah, you can find me on social media. I'm very friendly, accept everybody. And honestly, DM me if any of you guys have any questions when it comes to like starting a business. If you're like, do I not? Like, I am more than happy to sit down with anyone, talk with them, mentor them, give them advice, things like that. I'm an open book. I wear my heart on my sleeve, so I'm here to help anybody who wants it.
Yes, I so appreciate that, Reece. And listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find Reece's links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. You have heard it from him firsthand. He is inviting you to reach out. So do not be shy. 99% of people are way too shy, and they never take the chance to add incredible people and entrepreneurs to their network. But you've heard it firsthand from Reece. He wants to hear from you, so reach out to him. Otherwise, Reece, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was awesome. I had a blast. Thank you.